Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I have your attention all, please? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. India-Bangladesh share a deep and profound historical relationship. As neighboring countries, we are closely tied by language, culture, and religion. However, like any close neighbors, we have faced disputes and challenges over the years. It is crucial for both nations to work together and to address these issues for a brighter future. To shed light on the India-Bangladesh relationship and the way forward, it is my great honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Pranay Verma, the Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh, to kindly take the stage and share his valuable insights with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Devi. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I know it's a bit challenging for you also after the lunch to have a session like this, but I'll try and be as brief and precise as I can. I thank the Center for Governance Studies for this opportunity. Since this session is about reflections, let me reflect on and share with you how I look at India-Bangladesh relations, nurturing and advancing which is my primary preoccupation. Let me begin by reaffirming that our relationship with Bangladesh is long-standing and unique. We are linked by a shared history, shared geography, in addition to a common language and culture. We both seek and value a relationship based on mutual trust and understanding and mutual respect. There is broad shared empathy between our people, much of which can be traced back to Bangladesh's liberation war of 1971. Regardless of how it may be characterized, I believe it is a people-centric relationship. People and public opinion shape our relations more than we realize. As a neighbor to whom we take a long-term view of our relations, our ties with Bangladesh derive strength from our belief that our peace, security, progress, and prosperity are interlinked. And therefore, we strive to create common stakes in our mutual prosperity through a robust framework of multifaceted cooperation. Both of us are important stakeholders in the peace, security, and development of Bay of Bengal. We also share a common biosphere and ecological environment, which makes our collaboration vital for both of us to address shared challenges such as environmental sustainability and climate change. Because of its geographical location, emerging capacities, and growing regional and global ambitions, Bangladesh is not just an important pillar of our neighborhood first policy, but sits at the intersection of most of India's key foreign policy visions, such as the Act East policy, the doctrine of Saga, as well as our Indo-Pacific vision. We believe ours is a relationship of great consequence, not just for the two of us, but also for our region, given our growing capacities and aspirations to get more integrated by leveraging each other's strengths and complementarities. Bangladesh is uniquely poised to advance BIMSTEC integration agenda, being located at the geographical, political, and economic center of gravity of the region, and also as the host of the BIMSTEC's headquarters. Many transformative changes that have taken place in our relations and which unlocked the growth potential of our region are results of mutual sensitivity that we have shown to each other's concerns and aspirations. Bangladesh's zero tolerance to terrorism and its determination of not sheltering insurgencies directed at India proved vital for our cooperation and prosperity. It will remain an important factor in the future development of our two countries, our region, and our relationship. One of our biggest achievements, the resolution of our maritime and land boundaries, has opened up a whole host of avenues for our land and maritime connectivity, as well as cooperation in blue economy. Our maritime boundary settlement, by referring the matter to the Permanent Court of Arbitration and then following its ruling in letter and spirit, is a fine example of how the principle of democratic and rules-based international order that we strongly believe in has found reflection in our bilateral conduct. Ladies and gentlemen, a key manifestation of the transformation of our multifaceted partnership with Bangladesh that has directly benefited the people of our two countries is our growing trade and economic engagement and our connectivity links. Today, Bangladesh is our largest trade partner in South Asia and the fifth largest in the world. India, under SAFTA, has unilaterally given duty-free, quota-free access to all goods from Bangladesh for more than a decade now, which has enabled greater exports of Bangladesh goods to India. We often hear concerns about trade deficit from our friends in Bangladesh, but it is important to appreciate that much of India's exports to Bangladesh either constitutes critical inputs for a large part of Bangladesh's exports or are supplies of essential commodities that help Bangladesh deal with inflationary pressures. Actually, a less appreciated fact is that India is now among the largest export markets for Bangladesh in the entire Asia, with Bangladeshi exports to India consistently hovering around $2 billion mark over the last few years. And we do want that number to grow. Let me briefly talk about connectivity. We strongly believe that connectivity is a major enabler that help our societies, our businesses, and our people to closely connect and benefit from each other. And we haven't done badly. With a contiguous geography and a long shared history, what we are actually doing in many ways is trying to reconnect our two countries. We have, for example, restored 6 of the 7 pre-1965 railway links for both passengers and goods. A major part of our bilateral trade and people-to-people movement are channeled through 36 functioning land custom stations, 5 of which have been upgraded to the level of integrated checkposts. Just earlier this month, we added new infrastructure at Petropol Integrated Checkpost that will significantly enhance cargo movement and passenger convenience. Today, Bangladesh ready-made garment exporters are using 3 large Indian airports, Kolkata, Delhi, and Bengaluru, as highly cost-effective transshipment hubs for their exports to third countries, making Bangladeshi products much more competitive in Western markets. Our deep sea ports are ready to offer similar advantages to Bangladeshi exporters. But our connectivity links are not limited to trade and transport only. We are also building robust energy connectivity. And some of the examples are a new cross-border diesel pipeline that we launched last year, which brings high-speed diesel from an Indian refinery in Assam to Bangladesh. The cross-border power transmission lines, which are uninterruptedly supplying nearly 1,200 megawatts of power from Indian power grid to Bangladesh. And the first transmission of 40 megawatts of power from Nepal to Bangladesh through the Indian grid that just happened 2 days ago. All these are examples of how our energy connectivity and collaboration is augmenting our energy security and contributing to the creation of a truly regional economy. In short, I would say that our approach to connectivity is very simple. It is about transforming our geographical proximity into new economic opportunities that benefit people of both our countries and also of the entire region. Our belief that people are the foundation of our relations was evident when COVID-19 struck us and when we opened our arms to help each other. It is also evident in our large visa operations in Bangladesh, where despite currently limited operations, we continue to issue more visas to Bangladeshi citizens every day than any other diplomatic mission in Dhaka. As custodians of our future relationship, youth are obviously an important stakeholder in our partnership. This is evident in nearly 1,000 scholarships every year that India offers to Bangladeshi youths and young professionals, including from civil society and media, belonging to all regions and affiliations. Just 2 months ago, in September, more than 500 highly talented Bangladeshi students left for higher education at premier Indian educational institutions on our ICCR scholarship. Our Bangladesh Youth Delegation, or the BYD program as it is popularly known, is another robust platform for our youth outreach that today has a proud nationwide alumni group. So to sum it all up, let me affirm that India will continue to seek a stable, positive, and constructive relationship with Bangladesh, in which our people are the main stakeholders. We have and will remain supportive of a democratic, stable, peaceful, and progressive Bangladesh. Both India and Bangladesh are today far more developed and capable than they were ever before. And we also depend on each other far more today than we ever used to, as our economies and development paths continue to intertwine. We must keep reinforcing our interdependencies. As two aspirational societies with growing economic capabilities, there is so much we can offer to each other and create new opportunities if we continue to engage closely, pragmatically, and constructively with each other. A strong and prosperous Bangladesh, we believe, is as important for India as a strong and prosperous India is for Bangladesh. And one final reflection, the fact that our trade and economic ties, our transport and energy connectivity, and our people-to-people engagement have sustained a positive momentum despite the turbulent changes in Bangladesh, shows that our relations are truly multifaceted and cannot be reduced to a single agenda or a single issue. There are irritants, but they have not restricted the overall forward movement in our relations. As two nations whose progress and prosperity are as interlinked as our geographies and historical roots, the reality of our interdependence and mutual benefit will keep reasserting itself again and again, regardless of changes in the political wind. I once again thank the Center for Governance Studies for the gracious invite, and I do hope and wish that all of you present here today, in your varied roles, will contribute positively to shape the course and narrative of this very important relationship of ours with objectivity and with empathy. My apologies for exceeding the allotted time, and I thank you for all your patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, His Excellency, for sharing your valuable insights with us. Moving on, for our next session is Breaking the News, Freedom of the Press versus Weaponized for Information. For this session, I would like to invite on the stage Mr. Ange Carsons, Charge d'Affaires, the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands in Bangladesh, Bishwas Boral, editor, The Kathmandu Post, Nepal; Stephen Covers, director, Agency for Open Culture and Critical Transformation, Germany; Suhasini Shireen Haidar Miss, diplomatic editor, The Hindu, India; Mr. Tanvir Mohammed, senior government specialist, UNDP, Bangladesh; Mr. Marcus Davies, political counselor, Canadian High Commission in Bangladesh. The name, please. So please. I would kindly request Mr. Marcus Davies to moderate this session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here as the moderator. My name is Marcus Davies. I'm the political counselor for the Canadian High Commission of Canada. So it's a great pleasure to participate and be asked to moderate this panel on a very important topic. So as you see from the title, it's Breaking the News, Freedom of the Press, and Weaponized Information. The reason that we think this panel is so important is because in an era of high information, accessing reliable information to promote truth and veracity is a key element of democracy, and freedom of expression is a human right that we can all believe in. However, as we note from this panel, sometimes information that is conveyed can be extremely convincing, but not necessarily the truth. So in this respect, it's a pleasure to have a wide representation of experts and practitioners on responsible information management. And in that respect, I would note that we have a panel that is represented with 6 nationalities. So we have the Netherlands, we have India, we have Nepal, we have Bangladesh, we have Germany, of course we have Canada. So it's a pleasure to have all of you here. But I also would like to note is in this context, we're in a time of transition within Bangladesh that was advanced by an impressive movement of student activism. So as Chief Advisor Yunus indicated yesterday in his address in the inaugural opening session here, as he indicated, this was a student-led movement calling for change. So before we get into the talk from our expert panelists here, I'd like to ask, are there any students here who are attending at the conference? If you are, can you please applaud? Any students? Applaud, put your hands together. Okay. So have any of you in this current time of transition experienced challenges of trying to understand what type of information do I get? Am I sharing false information? Is this reliable information? Or any of you, have you struggled with those issues? If you do, can you put up your hand? I see a few hands there. Okay. So, because, as Chief Advisor Yunus said, you play a key role in the transition, and this is a platform to bring all voices and inclusive dialogue. So, I see somebody there in the middle with your hand up. Can you stand up? Okay. Are you a student? Okay. So, I want to invite to have the student voice part of this panel. It's a bit outside the protocol, but I've asked for an extra seat here, so would you be willing to come up and be part of this panel? Yes? Okay, please come up. So the reason here is, I think that this is important, and thank you for coming and agreeing to be part of this panel. So if I can just ask your name and what do you study and where are you? Mike, do we have an extra mic here? Here, I'm going to go to the podium and you can take my seat, okay? Here, please, go. So Nadia, Nadia, I heard your name, but for the benefit of can you please speak? So what is your name and where do you study?
Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. This is Nadia Sultana. I am graduating. I'm actually in my master's from Dhaka University in Bangladesh. Nice to meet you all. Hello.
Okay, thank you very much. So Nadia, you are now officially a part of the Bay and Bengal Speakers Series. So I have a mug that I will give you that I was given, but I was also given a pen. But I'm going to keep the pen because the pen has a dragon on it. So I want to keep the pen with the dragon, okay? But thank you for doing this. And just so you know, there's no pay, okay? So you're not getting paid to do this, okay?
I'm appalled.
Okay, thank you for doing this. So thank you, Nadia. I think it's important that the reason we're doing this is important that you recognize all of you as members of the audience. So yes, we have our panel here, but this is an issue that concerns all of us because we're both producers of information and consumers of information. And the student movement, especially at focal point around the universities, has been at the center of a vast, has received a wealth of information with which they have been working to process in a responsible way, but also had a huge impact on the politics and the situation within Bangladesh. So Nadia, thank you for being here. I think it's important that you be represented. And with that, I would like to now start the panel. And we've discussed before, so I ask all of the panelists to limit their opening statements to 5 minutes. And I will start with my first question. André Karsten, Chargé d'Affaires for the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Bangladesh. As the representative of the diplomatic community here, can I please ask you, what is the role that diplomats play in protection of freedom of information and management of disinformation? And in particular, what is the view on the Netherlands in this respect? So over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. And, well, it's a pleasure being here. It's my second day, yesterday at the opening. And, well, your question is a point in case. So I will get back to the elements of this container question in the course of my, hopefully, short enough introduction. So, as many of you might know, the Netherlands has been a solid partner of Bangladesh for many years in many fields. And one of them is freedom of press and media transparency. Public access to open, reliable, unbiased information is nothing less than a fundamental right. I would almost say oxygen. The importance of this principle nowadays is more evident than ever now that the flow of information can be manipulated easily with cyber speed. The Netherlands has consistently supported investigative journalism in Bangladesh and even in challenging times promoted a free media landscape. We are witnessing vital threats to such freedom, often spread by authoritarian regimes across the globe. These regimes seek to control the flow of information, curbing non-aligned journalists and media. A recent challenge we are facing is now the rise of artificial intelligence and its role in creating polarizing content online. While not always intentionally, the rapid spread of misinformation on social networks poses a serious threat to media integrity. As digital platforms are becoming the most dominant means of sharing information, we are facing a situation where any photo, video, or article, true or false, can go viral in the wink of an eye. This is a global phenomenon. Bangladesh is no exception. As part of our ongoing commitment, we have started a collaboration with the South Asia Center for Media and Development, SACMID, in Bangladesh. This collaboration focuses especially on the complex issue of disinformation on social media platforms, the easy sharing of verified stories, and the increasing trend of AI-generated content. It is of vital interest to raise public awareness on the risks of unchecked information being shared all over our societies. Often, people simply believe what they read on social media without paying any attention to the source or authenticity of this message. This lack of digital awareness plays a central role in the proliferation of disinformation. The project we are working on aims to educate people about the factors driving these phenomena, equipping the audience to critically engage with content online and recognize when they are being misled. We also need to consider the issue of access to social media. Who has access to these platforms and who has not? In many cases, those spreading disinformation are simply individuals who lack the proper knowledge of how to discern credible sources. This highlights the importance of collaboration between governments, civil society, and international organizations to address these challenges and improve public understanding of the issues surrounding online misinformation. The spread of rumors, hate speech, and even communal violence fueled by disinformation remains a significant issue today. While the expansion of social and digital media platforms has increased freedom of expression, it has also created an environment where user-generated content, without necessary oversight or fact-checking, can rapidly spread misleading or harmful narratives. Moreover, cyberbullying, in particular against women, is another serious consequence of this uncontrolled information environment. Women are disproportionately affected by online harassment, and it is crucial that we do not overlook their experiences when addressing disinformation. Concerning the global landscape, we can observe how authoritarian regimes are misleading the public and shaping their domestic and global narratives by disinformation and digital manipulation. We all know the examples of this. It affects how people perceive who's suffering and who's responsible for the violence. These narratives affect political moods, public debates, and can boost or undermine the will to defend, or even worse, to support a peace process. The key to combating these growing challenges lies in promoting digital literacy. We must empower people to better understand the information to which they are exposed and recognize when it's being manipulated to deceive them. As a global community, we must be able to distinguish fact from fiction in an increasingly complex digital landscape. The Netherlands is committed to promote a free and independent media landscape as a fundamental pillar of democracy. We do this on a global scale and for many years, as I said. Still, it will never become a routine matter. And as we really care for Bangladesh, we are deeply committed to supporting your media environment. On top of that, we are fully aware of the unique momentum now the new Bangladesh is in to get rid of manipulation and disinformation and set the right steps to reshape your media environment for, as was said yesterday by Mr. Yunus, a new civilization. Thank you very much. Dhanabat.
Thank you very much. So the purpose and one of the vibes that we'd like to come out of this panel is we want it to be a dialogue. We want it to people to speak to their areas of experience and their expertise. So we have heard the intervention of Ambassador Carson, so thank you very much. And the one to note from there is, as you see from the topic, it talks about global coalitions to prevent freedom of information. So Canada is being one of the founding countries for the Media Freedom Coalition, which is a coalition of member states that come together to try to work to promote freedom of the press and responsible management of information. However, to note, this cannot be done without engagement with the media and consumers. So I can see even here in front of me, a lot of people are consuming their social media right now. We're up here and they're like this, looking at their phones. So I will turn this over to what is often called the traditional media. And so we have Biswas Baral, editor of the Kathmandu Post for Nepal. So thank you for being here. And I have a question for you as an editor. So as the editor of this is a scenario. As the editor of a paper, you're being presented with a great piece of information that will allow you to get the scoop on your competitors. Like it's really, really good information, but you're not really sure how reliable it is. You know if you publish it, you're gonna sell a lot of newspapers, but you're not sure how reliable it is. What do you do?
Thank you. First of all, I come from a country that has the freest media in South Asia by many measures. So since 2005, when the royal coup happened, and since that time, the media has been absolutely free. We can write whatever we want. Even in Kathmandu Post, I can write pretty much as I want. But that freedom has also meant that anyone can produce any content anywhere. So as the oldest private media house, we have had to compete with YouTubers who make videos. Their videos get 300, 400,000 likes in an hour. No matter how good video we produce, we don't get more than 1,000, 2,000 views because theirs is more salacious, you know. It's basically clickbait. So coming back to your question, at the Kathmandu Post, I am lucky in the sense that our goal at the Kathmandu Post is not to be the first. We would rather sit on some information for a few hours, sometimes even for a few days, so that we can verify things, one. And two, our newsroom as such, it's not a very big newsroom, so the kind of scoop, as you put it, we rather than doing scoops, we do long form stories. But as far as other publications are concerned, even from Kantipur, say the Kantipur, which is a national daily, one of the things it does, and sometimes we also do that, is that there is a desk for online information too. So the desk, there are people whose job is to slow down the fast pace of news so that they have the time to check at least the basics. So unlike some online media outlets, we do a better job of fact checking. And that sometimes that means, not sometimes, often it means that we are not as fast as some of the other outlets, but that is not what we are into. We are in the business of providing factual information. If that takes some time, we like to take it. So, but if you look at the Nepali media landscape, like I said, it's a very free landscape, and there are many questionable online platforms now emerging. And for instance, yesterday, there was this famous news that our Prime Minister was going to India rather than China. And that news has still not been taken down, but they have buried it in somewhere inside the website. And that immediately got a lot of views and clicks, but it's a false news as far as I can tell. So I think a lot depends on what your intention is. If your intention is to get the news as fast as you can, you make many errors. But fortunately for me, I am a part of an organization where the truthfulness and veracity matters more than the speed of the news. So that is how we do it. Thank you.
Thank you. So this brings me to the next point in our line of dialogue here. We have Stephen Kobat, who's the director of the Agency for Open Culture and Critical Transformation, based in Berlin. For your awareness, I've worked with Stephen in Cameroon. We worked on a Defy Hate issue, which brings me to the question. Stephen, I've been given a news story from a news source that I don't know much about. I share it with a friend of mine, and my friend comes back and says, "Why are you sharing this with me? This is hate speech. You shouldn't be sharing this, but I think it's really important and that people really need to know, and I want to share it more." What do I do? How do I stop myself from sharing hate speech?
All right. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Marcus, for the introduction, and also a big thank you to the Canadian High Commission for the invitation and to the conference. It's a real honor to be here. So your question actually goes right to the core, even the history of this Defy Hate Now initiative. We struggle. And I mean everybody here in the room, I think, struggles with this massive burden of how to deal with speech, hate speech, or communication online in general. And we feel often helpless as individuals to actually do something. We think, okay, well, is it the UN, is it the government that should be legislating against, let's say, use of hate speech online? But every single person has an opportunity on their own. And so this scenario that you brought up brings to mind one of the little campaigns that we work on, which is simply called Think Before You Click. So if you have a piece of information or hearsay or somebody whispers into your ear about something, don't just automatically take it, for what it is, but think before you click, before you share it. That's already one way of having a response to hate speech. We're particularly interested, or we work very hard on trying to stop hate speech before it becomes incitement to violence. This is really the issue. Hate speech or insults, they're part of our, unfortunately, part of our DNA. We've always had it as people, as civilizations. But we have to be careful, obviously, in how we use our speech, because we don't necessarily know, sometimes we make a joke, how that joke is interpreted by someone else. It can be taken as an aggressive gesture, and that can lead to violence. The work that we do, and I'm an architect originally by profession. I'm not a journalist, I'm not a diplomat, but I work a lot with the media. And a war broke out in South Sudan almost 11 years ago. We were working in South Sudan with young tech innovators, and this war broke out, and we saw within a day or two of this conflict, before it really became a war, messages on social media that were designed, it felt, like to actually push a conflict that didn't even exist yet. And we saw messages also from Canadians, South Sudanese Canadians, let's say, who were pushing this, I guess, developing conflict in South Sudan. And we jumped at this with our friends and said, look, friends in South Sudan, we have to do something about this. There's people out there who know how to use these media to incite violence, and then there's the rest of us, the rest of the planet, who are kind of taken off guard, and we don't know how to deal with this. So they're acting in this zone of impunity. We have to fill this vacuum of attack, of hate speech online. And so this hashtag, the slogan of Defy Hate Now, was born as an urgent call. Like, just use this hashtag. Just say Defy Hate Now and stop it. Right? That's what one single person can do. And at that time, we went to the United Nations in Juba in South Sudan around February, March of 2024. So just a couple months after this conflict started, we said, look, you guys have a problem. You've got this war spiraling out of control in the country, but you have a third belligerent in the conflict. And these are people who are online, who are pushing this. And you have to do something about it. And at that time, 2014, a little over 10 years ago, there was very little talk about the relationship between social media and violence on the ground. Now, of course, we know it, we see it, it's unfortunately pervasive, but it took a long time to be able to prove that this actually happens, that when people share information or act on rumors, false information, disinformation, that it does actually lead to conflict. And this is what we have to work against. So just as a last point on that, like, it's taken a long time for this to be really recognized as an issue, and now it's a major part of almost every conference like this. In the work that we do, and this is maybe something that people here can also consider when you see messaging online or you're confronted with something like that, we tend to categorize messages in three categories. So we call one of them emotional. So it's just buzz. It's people who don't really know necessarily, if their words or their actions are harmful. It's just kind of innocent, I suppose, throwing insults or whatever around. So it's the buzz. Very hard to get rid of. But then there's a second level, which is like misappropriation. So we talk a lot about misinformation and disinformation, but before that, there's misappropriation. So people, for example, who remove an image from one conflict or one situation and sell it as something else. I think you've all seen this. In this growing age of AI, this is going to be one of the major issues of how to deal with the truth, is misappropriation of imagery. So we call this, let's say, personal or group virulence. It's mis and malinformation. And then the highest level, and this is really the thing we have to work very hard against, is the kind of disinformation which is directed. It's targeted, it's organized. It often has sponsors behind it, there's money behind it, there's a political agenda to cause harm. This is something that we need as organizations, as groups, as countries, to work against, not just to defy hate now, but also simply to avoid further conflict. So, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, but you didn't answer my question. Do I share the information or do I hold on to it?
Well, you know, like I said, I would think before you click, I would check it out. We as individuals, we also have a responsibility to check our sources, to check facts. It's the old adage of don't believe everything you read or everything you see. And this is even more important on social media. Journalists are journalists also because they have responsibility for the news, for the information that they share and they put out there. But we as individuals also have that responsibility. So no, I wouldn't share it. I mean, I would be suspicious of it, especially if it's somebody who's saying, well, I heard it from somebody and it's probably not good for that or that. It's like, well, what is the context? Why are you telling me this? Why should I be your agent to do your dirty work online, if we want to be nasty about it? So, yeah, we have to take responsibility, and we have to be extremely careful about the things that we do post and share online, like much more than at any time before. Does that answer the question?
Yes, that answers my question. Thank you. Okay, well, I think this brings us to a big, this is a good transition point, and this is for the students in the audience. We're going to talk to one of your own, because the students in this time of transition, although I'm new to Bangladesh, having arrived in July, I can very much see that the students have been at the epicenter of change, and in being at the epicenter of change, they have had conflicting information and had to be consumers, producers, consumers of information and producers of information. So Nadia, you are from the University of Dhaka. University of Dhaka, with the protest movement and everything, was at the center. Two questions for you. Based on what you've heard here from the panelists, does any of it resonate with you? And as a student and as a young person, what do you feel is hard for you to manage information either through social media or print media? What's your experience?
I'm literally quite the young person here, so I might not be the correct person to speak about this, but I was a part of that movement. It's called the student movement because it started as a movement, but it resulted as a revolution, what we call actually informally Bangladesh 2.0 right now. We took a step to independence to break out from the fascist government and their implications. It was 4 months ago when this revolution was, brimming and continuing to grow and get in our souls a bit, because it's a long struggle. We have been talking about this quota movement, or it started as a quota movement, but it resulted in what actually Mr. Stephen actually addressed, hate speech, or there are a few more words like massive deal of pressure. It actually made us helpless to that point that students, those are the actually futures of our country. And as a student myself, I in fact was a part of that, but unfortunately I wasn't actively in part from the very beginning. But yes, as you can see from the news, or that's where actually power of media comes in, because without the news, I don't think any of you will be even aware of the fact that we have been through a long struggle. There were students who were murdered or accidentally injured, and there were permanent losses for us. As students, people expect us, at least our culture expects us, to only learn from our elders, our teachers. But when we go against or revolt against such a powerful people, it scares you, and at the same time, it made us so helpless to the point that we revolted against them. Misinformation actually leads to conflicts, because my fellow Bangladeshi people will actually recognize this. A very powerful leader called us, addressed us, I'd say, as Rajakar. That's a very popular word in students, because that almost means we are betraying something. We are asking for our rights. We are doing a movement. We were pledging for what is right and what is being done wrong. We were trying to make them understand that. But rather than listening to our concerns, our issues, resolving them, it turned out as if we were trying to win a war against our own government. That is not what we were actually opting out for. And responsible management of social media is a very well-known concern here, because through this media and representation, actually this movement was publicized or even known to all of you as well, because the media platforms, the internet, massive information. I'm sure the panelists know about the information provided, or the news you've seen through televisions or internet sources. People posted videos of it, as our fellow panelists described. Various, either they were hate speech, or their revolting voices, or their disagreements. Some were concerns as well. But what people choose to click, like Stephen said, actually, think before you click. You clicked on those informations, you know what the printed or the shown media represented. But those who were in the fight, in the streets, in the hospitals even, behind the closed doors, the actual leaders, those who were in the decision-making positions, what they were doing was behind closed doors. So unless you have actually struggled through that, you have no idea to actually know about the recent scenario or current scenario. So that's my point of view, that media representation, yes, it introduced us to the platform, but what the real struggle was way more intense. And can I know the second question again? Thank you. I think that was from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And hold on to the mic, because I'm sure there'll be other questions as you're a panelist here. I would just note, for the benefit of the other students here, Nadia, I mean, I selected her from the hall, and it could have been any of you. So, I mean, she's sharing her personal views on what she's experienced. But from my opinion, personal opinion, and I think with the opinion of the panelists here, I think it was important to have that voice, because to see that perspective, to make it real and bring it back to the Bangladesh context. So thank you for sharing that perspective, but her participation isn't personal, and whereas we're all representing here as our organizations or in a different context. But it's important to have that personal insight in this dialogue. Which brings me now back, as we've heard Nadia's comments about the different types of media that is being consumed to get the news. And we've heard a common theme about finding out what is the truth, what information can you rely on, what's the impact of the news you're spreading. Are you spreading disinformation? Are you spreading misinformation? What's your personal responsibility there? So that respect, I'd like to go to our next panelist, is Shuhasina Serene Haidar, who is the diplomatic editor of The Hindu in India. So, as a journalist, we have heard commitments to media integrity, which I'm sure you encapsulate in your work. But one of the things that you find is that more and more of your readers are reading the news on social media, and they're telling you that you no longer have the finger on the pulse of politics because they are hearing different stories than what you are reporting in your paper. You suspect that some of the news that they are reading is not reliable, but you also know that it is being believed by many people. What do you, as a journalist, do, and what should the industry do as journalism to respond?
Thank you, Marcus, and thank you to CGS for bringing us here to discuss this issue, because I think it is a global issue. It's not just something we face in India or in the subcontinent, in South Asia, but around the world today. And I'll come to really where the challenges lie. But, some years ago, I remember seeing this cartoon. And in the cartoon, you had an aeroplane, and all the passengers are very worried because there's some turbulence. And one of the passengers stands up and he says, all those on the plane who would like to have a go at flying this plane now, put your hand up and, let's take one of them. And the whole idea was to say, there is a reason for expertise, there is a reason for experience, there is a reason for education that takes you into a certain path. Journalism that is practiced by the fourth estate, by media organizations, is done like that for a reason, because journalists take the time to find out what's happening, to find out what are the two sides saying on the same issue, to find out where you can reasonably draw your conclusions. And there is a reason that journalism is attached as much with credibility. So when you say there are people on social media who say, you're telling a lie, or somebody else who says you don't have your finger on the pulse of the people, journalism is not a popular activity. We're not journalists in order to be popular. We're journalists because we think that is our role as professionals. Where do the challenges to that come from? And that answers your question really in terms of who's weaponizing information today. The first challenge comes, and this is global, it comes from, unfortunately, today's leadership, today's governments, that believe that essentially they can now work the system so that they no longer need filters. They no longer need to answer questions from journalists because, journalists are supposed to, it's their job to be well informed about what kind of questions to ask and how to counter what somebody in power says. So the first real counter is coming from leaders around the world, and without naming names, you know who they are, those leaders who call journalism fake news, or those leaders who refer to journalists as prostitutes, or media traders. The idea is to take away, demonetize journalism and take away from their credibility. So the first challenge comes from there. I think the second comes from the growing corporate ownership of the news, which even if it doesn't say take political sides, for example, it certainly says you will not speak against the corporate ownership of news. I think some of it has come because the news is suddenly seen as a profit-making venture, bottom lines, television channels grabbing eyeballs, not just good enough to get eyeballs, sticky eyeballs is what you need. You're judged by the number of likes and the number of retweets and the reposts that you get on any story. But actually, you should be judged on how good your story is. And that's what a journalist is in the business for. I think the real challenge is that we have started to see the news as a product, that can actually be marketed, that can be commodified. But the news, and I know many of you will be cynical about this, but is and always will be a public service. It is called the fourth estate for that reason. The third challenge, I think, comes from activism in media itself. Those who believe, however well-intentioned they are, that their activist beliefs are actually part of a good newspaper. The amount of flack we get as journalists from those who think we're not doing enough to promote the cause is as much of a challenge, because as a result, that too seeks to take away from the credibility of a news story. And I think the fourth, and you mentioned this, is the challenge of social media. The idea that everyone has a newspaper publishing machine on their fingertips, and that's your telephone. That you are able to put out news just like any news organization is. And I think we have to walk back from that a little bit because of what Stephen said, because of the idea that we need to have news that can be relied on. How do I know that I can pass this on to my children or put it in a family WhatsApp group if I don't know whether it's true or not? I think finally we do need to take a larger look, but we need to take a much deeper look at ourselves. We have turned the world, all of us, into a polarized phenomenon. So it is okay to say press freedom is under attack in one part of the world, but it's not okay to talk about that same press freedom in another part of the world. We all know the numbers the Committee to Protect Journalists puts out every year of journalists who are killed, attacked, assaulted. But we have to be as angry about the journalist that is being targeted in India or Bangladesh as in Gaza or in Sudan or anywhere else around the world. We have to be upset about the kind of restrictions perhaps you see in some countries like Moscow, in Russia. But we also have to speak up for journalists who are being sanctioned by Western governments in the same way. What I'm trying to come back to, without necessarily taking a position on one side or the other, is essentially that somewhere there we have to reclaim the space for good journalism. And I think eventually it will be about credibility, that you will live in a world, obviously we all live in that world where a lie goes halfway around the world before the truth has time to put its pants on. But we will also live in a world where, as Biswas pointed out, real credible journalism will take the time to not necessarily be first to put out something, even if it is the last, but to be absolutely truthful when it does.
Thank you very much. And it's always a pleasure to be on kind of panel with experts, especially journalists who, when you listen to them express themselves, I'm always reminded, oh, this is how you're supposed to communicate. So very eloquent. And so now we turn to another representative of the international, so-called international community. So we started with the diplomatic community, and our last speaker is a representative of the international organizations. So we have Tanvir Mahmood, who is the Senior Governance Specialist for UNDP Bangladesh. So Tanvir, my question is to you is, let's assume that I'm a representative of civil society, and I want to protect freedom of expression. So I come to you and say, you work for the UNDP. Pay for my project and fix everything. What do you do?
I would say, how much you want to pay from the global north?
How much you got?
So look, yeah, so it's the issues of the problems, right? So it depends on what are the problem and then what can be done. So it's not on the money, it's something is more than that. So I would say just look back the problems first and then think about what happened in Bangladesh. So if I reflect some of the issue that Nadia mentioned, I would say that, look, Bangladesh has a historically very vibrant media. And if you look into over the time, we have seen the space has been shrinking. And then the space shrink because of not that is the only the political, but also the wider. So there are a number of factors I think has happened. Is mainly from the legal restrictions, but also some sort of the internal. I would say that overall the media freedom relies on the three things. One is the financial independence of the media house. The second one is the editorial independence. The third one, of course, is the skill set. So depending on the issues, I think we need to look into that what can be done as an international development partner, and we all have a responsibility to do that. It's not only the Bangladesh, or it's not only Canada, or even other country. I think we need a kind of broader coalitions and to fix this problem, because the problem is not only for Bangladesh, there are many other countries that are probably facing the same sort of the problems. So with that in note, just probably two, I think, statistics that might be helpful to understand overall Bangladesh media landscape. If you look into the Press Freedom Index 2024, you see the Bangladesh rank is now 165, and out of 180. And that has reduced from 2021, it was 152nd. So that means that over the time, even if within 2 to 3 years, that has a huge decline. So with that, I think it's not only the press freedom, it's also the freedom of expressions. And if you look into the other some index, like the Freedom Foundations, Bangladesh has been categorized as partly free. That means that there are many other issues that people are afraid of speaking of. Now, looking into that, the many journalists when I talk, they said that they cannot express freely in their media outlet is because of either they're afraid of their own safety and security, but also is some sort of the self-censorship. And some of them probably are forced just to be silent. So in that perspective, I think from the UNDP and from the UN agency, we are committed to promote the media freedoms. And from UNDP in cooperations with other UN agencies, we are currently working with number of the programs and projects to support the media freedoms. Currently, we are assessing some sort of the assessment on the current media landscape with UNESCO. And hopefully that report will help us to understand what can be done, and that will also influence the current the government's aspirations for some sort of media reform. And as you know that the government recently also formed the reform commissions. So we would be happy to collaborate with the reform commissions for the media freedom perspective. We also think that there are a number of areas I think we need to think about it. One, particularly in terms of the capacity. And as I think His Excellency Ambassador said, that the opportunity coming up, especially technology perspective, artificial intelligence, a lot of the data, big data, and then how the journalist can be equipped to analyze all of those kind of technological advantage and be effective just to promote those. So that kind of the skill set, I think we are also exploring from that how we can help the journalist to improve all those. And then the third point is about their own, the skill set about the investigative journalisms. Because you know that investigative journalism is really important to tackle the corruptions, also to abuse the human rights for many instances. And that investigative journalism, we know that there are many journalists who publish this, they are subject to the harassment, either from physical or the legals. So that should not be the case. So in conclusions, I would say, first of all, we have to acknowledge the fact that journalists are not our enemy. They are the frontliner safeguards for the people's needs. So that's, as long as we accept this, now we have to look into that we have to set some bar, that there are some areas that the politicians or the power holders should not touch upon, and they should allow to operate the journalist the way that they should operate. And this is something also need to look into the editorial policy, because the editorial policy will really help them to get some sort of the understanding and their own freedoms so that they can play their roles. And in many instances in Bangladesh, we have seen that some media outlets, the editorial policy probably needs further improvement. So I think from the UNDP side, we also looking for some partnerships to help some of the media house and the media partnerships, how we can help to improve on this. And the last point is about the financial independence. That's also important, because in many instances nowadays, that media house, if they relied on the business community or the business owners, then in many instances they also can't operate. So how the media house can also be effectively be independent financially, we need to explore those. And there are many models. I think that different agencies and media houses are now trying and piloting. We need to learn from other countries how the other countries in the different nations are financially independent. With that, I think we can share that learning to the Bangladesh community. So I should stop, and I would be happy to respond if you have questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we're going to, in just a minute, we're going to go into the free-for-all, which is otherwise known as question period. So I hope you have some good questions. But before we get there, and I can see people coming up, so this is great. I just want to give all the panelists 30 seconds each to make a comment on what they've heard. I know it's often hard to stay within 30 seconds, but so we can give enough time to the floor to ask their questions. So I'm going to start by going from my left to the right. So, and if you don't have any comment, that's fine. But Nadia, do you have a comment you want to make on what you've heard here on this panel?
Yeah, actually, I prepared a simple question for you, all of your panelists, but I didn't know I was going to be here sitting actually next to you. I mentioned about the student movement and the revolution we went through. There was a news article, since we are talking about journalism and use of social media platforms, there was a headline in a very well-known newspaper, leading newspaper actually in our country. I wanted to ask your opinion on it. I can say that I intended to use it as an example of weaponizing information. The headline was, it's actually targeted at the journalists, that such hunger for power among journalists has never been seen before. What do you think about this? How do you interact with this? When you see this headline, what comes in your mind instantly?
Thanks. We'll keep, I know you said instantly, but I'll go through the panel and then we'll come back to your question and we'll take questions from the floor. So, Ambassador.
Yeah, well, I'm relatively new in this country, and so I take another example to reflect on you, and that's, well, the kind of suggestion I made that everything is so new with AI and all the new techniques. But if we remember, not so long ago, but before there was any internet available, at least in Rwanda, a kind of mass brainwashing campaign was done via radio. And so it is only different tools, different means, but the principle is already very old. And so we can make use of our experience, not just over the past few years, but even when we go back a bit further back down in our history. And then, if I may, just one other point. You made the distinction between personal and public. So you were personal, we were public. And in my view, we are all personal. So, and that brings me to another kind of personal advice, if I may. So whatever you do on the internet and social media, take into account that everything is being kept in the cloud. So that is another reason to be mindful of how you behave, of course, in general in life, but in particular on the internet, because everything is being kept and can be used against you. So be mindful what you click and what you cry out. There's always a longer term memory. And then finally, if I may, a picture can tell more than 1,000 words can do. And therefore, there is the World Press Photo Exhibition in Dhaka. It has been supported by us for decades already. And it is a fine example also of the openness of this organization for all kind of events on a global scale. And Bangladesh is and will be also included, because it's a prime scene of humanity and hopefully a bridge to this new civilization I already referred to. That's it.
So, Tanvir, I'm going to keep you to 30 seconds, and we'll go quickly so we can give the floor. Okay.
So quickly, I think first thing we have to use our common sense and always just try to be just triangulate the information, because in a world where the information is so difficult to judge the truth, I would say that always just try to be explorative and just use your common sense and see whether the headlines that you are seeing in the different sources are correct. Because in many instances I see the headlines is totally different than what the content is. And many instances people has a tendency to go just to see the headlines, not the content. So that I think we have to be careful.
Bewas.
Yeah, I think the credibility of any organization is established over time. And what tends to happen is that even established news organization like ours, we make one mistake and it's blown completely out of proportion online. And so what happens is one news becomes sort of a battering ram, one news you use to show that the whole media organization is not credible. And talking about this financial aspect of functioning of journalism, in Nepal what you see is that there are news organizations limited to 1 or 2 persons. They operate from a single room and they get thousands and hundreds of thousands of views because what they produce is instantly likable. Whereas when we produce things, we don't get that kind of audience. So you as consumers of news also have to be aware that what you are watching, what you are reading, you are not just consuming it, that is, especially online, that is also a source of revenue for the news organizations, for the respective news organizations. So if you are constantly watching fake news, if you are constantly watching a website that gives you this information, you are also paying them financially. So I think it works both ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Minutes until we get to question period. Shusasina, please.
Simple. I would just say be prepared to pay for being credibly informed. In other words, make a point. If you are buying a newspaper, great. If you are subscribing online to a news portal that you believe is credible, great. But ensure that the news you believe is not something that's just coming to you for free. Simply because there is a reason why real journalism takes effort, takes resources, takes a lot of man-hours and woman-hours to put together. So be prepared to pay for being credibly informed. I think that's all.
Stephen, final brief word, and then over to questions.
Okay, thank you. I think in response to some of the things that we're talking about here, I'd like to make a suggestion to the students to add something to their kit in strengthening the truth. Set up a debunking platform or a fact-checking platform and make it very public. So use that as a tool to de-weaponize information and fake news. Not just be helpless and soak it in, but get together and fact check, publicize, debunk the information so that everybody sees really what is hopefully the truth and the reality. Use it as a strategy.
Thank you very much. Now we come to question period. So line up, and we see lots of interest. So let's go. All right. I just was told I'm in trouble. So, well, Ambassador, you said you're new. I'm new too, so that's why I became the moderator and not the panel participant. So please, over to you. We'll take 4 questions, and then we'll give some answers, and then so be patient, and we'll go as fast as we can. Thank you.
Hello everyone. I'm Naurin Sultana, studying Mass Communication and Journalism in University of Dhaka. So my question is, as we know, authoritarian regimes often seek to control education systems to manipulate public opinion. In the context of weaponized information, media literacy can play a crucial role in raising awareness. However, in our own experience under an authoritarian regime, media literacy has rarely been promoted with noble intentions. Instead, it has often been used as a political weapon. For example, during the times of political unrest, the regime would issue messages like, "Gujobe kan deben na," don't fall for rumors, through media to control the narrative. Looking ahead, it's likely that such regimes will continue to centralize and politicize media literacy. When we are talking about common sense, it's also constructed to some extent by the regimes, and we have a large underprivileged community. Given that privatized efforts are unlikely to reach remote areas on a large scale, so how can we effectively decentralize media literacy and ensure it reaches these underprivileged areas? I'd be happy if anyone answers the question. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take the next question, and we should not forget about Nadia's question as well. So next.
So, as a transgender rights activist deeply involved in advocating for gender and sexual minorities in Bangladesh, I would like to ask how
if I can just interrupt. If you want to direct your question to one member of the panel, also indicate that.
I just want to finish my question, and anyone can answer from the stage. So I would like to ask, how can the media be held accountable for avoiding critical coverage of transgender and gender and sexual minorities community, especially when weaponized information about these communities is used to distort their identities and silence their struggle? How can journalists resist such pressures and ensure inclusive and accurate reporting? In addition, as Nobel laureate Professor Yunus worked for this community abroad, but he is silent in his own home country. However, his silence on these issues within Bangladesh, especially while holding a position of influence, is deeply disappointing. Every transgender person in this country living in constant fear, which is simply unacceptable. Our existence and rights are treated like a volatile issue, ignored by those in power to maintain their own positions, leaving us marginalized and voiceless. I would like to seek attention, the perspective of Ambassador Chastity Affairs of Netherlands.
Hello. Hello here. So I am Ifa Sarira, currently studying in Dhaka University. So my question is, in the previous regime, the ruling party practiced autocracy in disguise of democracy. They manipulated elections by stealing votes, casting votes the night before the election day, and preventing voters from casting ballots for their preferred candidates. They were being forced to vote candidates of the ruling party. Despite conducting 3 such questionable elections, most media outlets failed to broadcast these irregularities. Instead, national television channels presented a false narrative that the election was fair. So this propaganda also almost misled the international media. Consequently, as the threat was domestic, our voices may have not been amplified enough. So my question is, how can media independence can be ensured to prevent such practice in future, as we have an upcoming election in future? And what role can be played by international media if such happens? Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 4 questions right now. We'll wait for you guys to come, so if you're just patient. We have the first question from Nadia about the headline. We have a question, so when we have the other 3 questions there. So is anybody on the panel like to entertain or respond to some of the issues here? Okay.
There was one question deliberately addressed to me, so I would like to take that one. The first article of the constitution of my country is that everyone in our country should be treated equally. So therefore, well, it goes without saying that equal treatment in our country is a principle widely accepted. This is not the case in many other countries. And despite the fact that we include this in our foreign policy, so we try to support all kinds of groups, vulnerable groups, marginalized groups, indigenous groups, and many others. There's also the principle of doing no harm. So at a certain point, it might backfire. And so therefore we operate carefully, but please be assured, we have a well-balanced program to operate gradually forward in good harmony with the society and see wherever we can help. And of course, this is also a digital dimension for which we are open and willing to do whatever we can. I hope this is more or less in line what we have been practicing over the years, because as I said, I'm new, but this is once again a global principle and practice from my country. So feel assured that we stand by you. Thanks.
And I'll turn to the three questions that seem to have a common theme about the impact of the media in a politicized context and what role does it play. So perhaps we have two journalists here. Perhaps I can ask if you have any views on this and the role that media can do to, in response to the questions that were asked.
Sure, I think we come back to the idea, support good journalism. When you see a credible news organization dealing with challenges of the kind that I mentioned earlier, support that. We tend to become cynical and feel it doesn't matter, all journalists, as, I think Nadia's question, journalists are hungry for power, journalists are all, agenda-driven journalists. They're not all. The idea is that there is credible journalism out there. There are newspapers and television channels. You have a right to expect better journalism from them. And when you see it, I would say support it. So again, be prepared to pay for credible information.
Yeah, one question was regarding that the government controls the press and whatever they want is being broadcast. That reminded me, back in 2005, there was a coup in Nepal. The king took over. And what happened was the king had deployed people inside the newsroom. So there'd be an army personnel sitting next to me. I'd write the news and he would edit it and he would publish it. So the actual publisher was the army, right? So the change starts from top, right? I think Bangladesh has already taken a huge stride by removing perhaps the biggest obstacles to press freedom in journalism in Bangladesh. So I think that in itself will greatly open up the space whereby the media can report on almost anything they like. Like I said, the press in press in Nepal is perhaps the freest in South Asia. From the time when an army major dictated what we could or could not print, now we have come to a stage we can write virtually anything we like. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just add to that as well, I mean, and like I'm not a journalist, but I think there are scenarios I think that maybe was being described here as well, where journalists are also held ransom to the system, that they operate in, and this is also where credibility is lost often. So there is often a necessity for civil society to also hold the media also accountable for what they do, and that's your task. And that's why I was saying, like, the students, you guys have the task to get together and look at these things, not just talk about it yourself and, soak it in, say we can't do anything about it, but when I say get together and make, set up a debunking platform and make it public, you can do that, right? And people will see it and they will respond. And that's one of the things that helps strengthen civil society. wherever. This is an issue even in Germany. But you have to do it, yeah? And don't be afraid. The journalists, the good journalists, they're on your side too, but there's a lot of powers out there against you. Yeah? So use the power that you have. And there's plenty of resources and tools out there, for example, how to do that technically. It's not too difficult, but you have to take that step.
Thank you. So
yeah, lots of time.
Yeah, go Tambur, please.
Just to add two, I think, reflections. As you know that the inclusive development is part of everything. And from the UN side, I think we always promote the inclusive. So every person has the right to live with respect, dignity, irrespective of their age, sex, religious identity, or ethnicity. So that should be, I think, also need to promote in the media literacy, as you said, that our journalists needs to, promote this kind of the things, so that there is kind of the conflict analysis, or in some sort of the gender analysis should also come into that. The second point, I think, on about the decentralization of the media literacy, I think we need to think about the different level of our stakeholders and how the different tools and techniques we can use, not necessarily for the capital-centric or even the very traditional media outlet, but also the new emerging online-based tools, how we can use this so that every person, whoever just they live, they can get the benefit of it. And the last point from about the elections, as you said, so let's not go back, let's move forward. And then from that perspective, the learning that we got from the past, if we just really equip ourselves and the media, I think the next time, I think media really can play a vital role, and all the media, irrespective of the national or international, can play a vital role in promoting the democracy. And that's the future of Bangladesh. If media really play their role, the democracy will flourish. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So just to be informed, we've kind of come to the end of our time. I'm sorry we're not able to take more questions because some of our panelists have to have other commitments. But some takeaways that I think we can take from this panel is I made the dichotomy that people speaking in their public and not their personal context, but I think what we have taken from here is that we're all part of this process as both producers of information and consumers. So the public and the personal become intermeshed, and that means taking from the point that Stephen had raised, and we also have the responsibility, the comments for integrity and choosing journalism with integrity, is that we all have a responsibility for the management of information and the protection of freedom of expression. So to the extent that we've had this panel to try to be as representative as possible, and we've reached out to include Nadia here, from the visibility standpoint, but I also hope from the next step standpoints, is that you see that this discussion is doesn't stop with this panel. This is just the start for you to take lessons learned and things that resonate with you and put them into practice in your daily lives. Because every one of you, I would imagine, 5 minutes from now is going to be on your phone looking at something. And this is where you practice the tools of processing of information. So thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you to the journalists. Thank you to the diplomats. Thank you to the UN officials. And thank you to Nadia, the representative of the student body. It's a pleasure for us as the High Commission of Canada to moderate this. And thank you to the Bay of Bengal for putting together this forum so we can have these discussions. And with that, I bring the panel to an end, and my deep gratitude to all of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And use this hashtag. If everybody sends out a message to defy hate now, right, you will help work against hate online. Simple things like this. Everybody has their own hashtag, but this is a very nice one. It's universal. So maybe we'll get some hate reduction coming out of this room today. So thank you, everybody, and keep doing it. And thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
I am requesting the speakers for a group photo, please. Please, seated.
What? Oh, okay.
I'm going to give